Time for another board recap podcast. How are you today, Dr. Smith?
It's a great day.
Well, last night we had, I guess, our first board meeting of the summer. Last week, before we get started, we can touch base on this. We had commencements, and what a celebration.
The joy that we saw on the faces of our students makes everything worthwhile. It was a great, great week.
And not only on their faces, the families, the friends, we had great audiences.
Yes,
A
we did.
lot of people coming out to see those, and really was something special. So now that we have moved into the summer, there's certainly a lot of work ahead as we get ready, all ready for next year. But we'll jump back into last night's meeting. We had our beginning, of course, with good news, and we started by saying the Southern Indiana Career and Tech Center received an education readiness grant from the governor's workforce cabinet, and that's going to help students and really provide supports for the advanced manufacturing program. So that is certainly a powerful program for them. Our early college high school received the early college endorsement by the Center of Excellence from the University of Indianapolis. That's the third time they've had that. Speaking of our graduates, we talked about those special ceremonies last week. Our 2022 graduates were offered over $36 million in scholarships. I'm going to stop right there. That has to make you feel good to hear that figure.
Makes me feel great. And I'm sure parents appreciate that too.
Most
But
definitely.
lots of options for our kids, not only when they're in school, but also when they graduate. $36 million offered. That is a tremendous number.
Yeah, it really is an incredible figure. We did, speaking again of commencement, I updated the board. We had really some phenomenal pictures that captured the spirit of our Harrison graduates last week in particular, because they had quite a downpour last week during the middle of their commencement. And that has now reached over 950,000 Facebook feeds. People have been sharing and engaging with those pictures because I think it was just a feel good moment. In spite of Mother Nature throwing a curveball at them, those students really just reacted with pure joy.
Yes.
And then we had two groups that stopped by to be in the audience last night, members of the Bossy Lacrosse program that also includes athletes from Harrison, and then also a group known as SEMA. They are a men's mentoring group, and they have really been powerful mentors for Lincoln School. And I know in speaking with Lincoln's principal, Tawana Tolliver, she really does lift them up. And I know you're always pleased to see people that are coming in and helping support our schools. So
Absolutely.
that wraps up good news, and then that takes us into the beginning of last night's meeting. Turn that over to you, Dr. Smith, for consent items.
Yeah. So when we look at consent item number 2.02, allowance of payments, folks can click on that document. It's about a 34-page document, but they will be able to see all of the bills that were paid in that 3-week period of time. And the allowance of payments this time was $12.7 million. Going on to item 2.03, consideration to approve purchase items from extracurricular accounts. Harrison High School is going to put up some lettering, some branding in areas where they currently do not have that. And then Delaware Elementary is purchasing a large 3D printer. Then we go on to item 2.04. This is a grant opportunity that the Career and Tech Center is exploring, and the grant name is Explore, Engage, and Experience Grant. We're asking for $1 million. I think there's about a $10 million availability throughout Indiana, so probably will not receive that entire amount. But basically, we are trying to, I think, elevate, if you will, a lot of the opportunities that our kids have when it comes to career and technical education and just experiences. So, one of the things that I think is pretty unique is what would be experience trailers and then the simulation equipment that would be included in those to really demonstrate different careers and different career opportunities that are available for our students when they are in elementary and middle school so they can make better and more informed decisions about their passions in life. Then moving on to item 2.05, resolution to transfer from the education fund to the operations fund. We take this resolution to the board every quarter and transfer $5.5 million out of our education fund to our operations fund. And that really is a function of how the state changed funding back many years ago. And this is a byproduct of that. Item 2.06, consideration to approve the resolution to request a school number for the EVSC Virtual Academy. So there is a law in Indiana that says that any school corporation that has at least 100 students, so that's really what pertains to us, enrolled in corporation where they get at least 50% of their instruction through virtual education, that they have to have a dedicated virtual education school. We before the pandemic had always been just a little bit under 100. There was this law, I think, was actually put on pause during the pandemic. Now, hopefully, that we're through the pandemic and into the endemic phase. This is now an active law once again, and we currently have about 300 students in a virtual academy. I think we're probably continue to be above the 100 mark. So that's why we are asking for a school number. And what that means is they will really operate then as a separate and distinct school instead of a program.
And, we've said many, many times, especially through the pandemic, how lucky we were that we've had our virtual academy in place for really well over a decade.
Oh my gosh, probably about 15 years. Yeah.
And it's just interesting too how it has evolved through time, the purpose it served, and then of course the pandemic. We know how it exploded, and it was such a value to us to have that, and now kind of settling back into what we would anticipate with really probably larger numbers than we had pre-pandemic.
Right. I think it's a good option for some students, but it is once again yet another option that we do have.
All about having the options that are appropriate for all
Yes.
students.
Item 2.07, consideration approved change order number one for Culver Special Education Pre-K renovation project. And the short version of this is that we are able to install a restroom uh, in that particular part of Culver, and that's why that change order is there. Item 2.08, consideration to approve class fee schedule for the 22-23 school year, and all the fees remain the same with the exception of an addition of a K-8 physical education fee of $3. 2.09, consideration to approve the renewal agreement with Achieve 3000 for Actively Learn. We've used Achieve 3000 once again for over a decade, and many of our teachers love that program and what it does for our students. Item 2.10, consideration to approve first grade pilot curricula for Oak Hill as well as textbook rental rates for high school Spanish. And this really comes as a result of requests from teachers, those that are frequent listeners of our podcast. At the previous board agenda, we did approve curricula and also textbook rates. Teachers, though, at Oak Hill wanted to expand EL into first grade. So we brought this back to the board for their approval. And then also high school Spanish, instead of using individual textbooks, they were just using a classroom set of textbooks, which is a lesser textbook rental rate for our family. So certainly happy to bring that back and then to adjust the rental rates down for high school Spanish. 2.11, consideration to approve the renewal agreement with Youth First. This is an annual contract, um, either an annual or biannual contract renewal with Youth First. We've been partners with Youth First from the inception of Youth First, and I think many folks will know that we now have social workers in every one of our school buildings, and the vast majority of those are Youth First social workers. So this just outlines the expectations on both parties, as well as authorizes payment to Youth First for those Youth First social workers.
So fortunate for us to have a partner like Youth First that where we can work together to for the betterment of our students and our families.
Yes. And the next item, 2.12, consideration approved driver owned equipment contract. We have Peggy Shelton, who is retiring. Wish her the best in her retirement. And that route now is going to go to Brown Bus Transportation with a new driver for Brown. And this simply memorializes that. Item 2.13, consideration to approve the renewal agreement with Johnston's for a regalia. That would be basically for the cap and gown. It's going to go up $1.20, so it will be $28.70. I think the last time that we had renewal on this was 3 years ago. So we are very pleased with Johnston's service and quality. And then that reflects the price increase. When we look at item 2.14, this is a renewal agreement with Johnston's for diplomas. That's going to go up 2 cents per diploma uh, to be 56 cents per per diploma. And we've used Jostens once again for a number of years for that purpose. Item 215 and 216 are very similar. This is consideration 215 to approve the agreement with Arc Crisis Child Care Center. Basically, since 2011, we have provided food service for ARC in the summer, and this basically formally extends that relationship. The meals are prepared at Lincoln and then are picked up by ARC. And then the same is true for item 2.16, the agreement with Rising Star Child Care LLC. And then finally, under consent, item 2.17 is consideration to approve the renewal agreement with DeBral Kumble Incorporated for chiller inspections. They've held the price the same as it was in 2021, even though we now have installed some new chillers. So we have an additional chiller, but they're holding the price the same, and appreciate the service that they provide for us.
And that brings an end to last night's consent items and takes us into consideration of personnel.
Yes, and as is customary, the board agenda is listed there for your perusal. All items on the personnel agenda were approved by the board, and certainly invite the public to take a look at that agenda.
Okay. And then that takes us into core curriculum last night. And then actually, this even then goes into the first information item. So we are joined once again, a former guest of the show as well, Stacy Mauser, our Chief Technology Officer. Stacy, thank you for coming in today.
Glad to be here.
So, Stacy, let's kind of go through this for our listeners or viewers of this podcast. So, you were talking last night about moving forward with a new student information system. So, for anybody listening, give us a little bit of an overview. What are we talking about?
So, really, we were talking about an overhaul and implementation of upgrading all of our systems. So, student information system, of course, is the core because that's what runs our schools. So, it's that piece of software that the teachers interface with to enter grades, to keep track of their students, to take attendance, to schedule. That's the student information side. But we're also talking about an upgrade to our HR systems, our finance systems, some assessment tools that the schools use, and a program called Naviance, which is a college and career piece of software that'll benefit our kids and help them make choices of what they want to be and what they want to do in the future. So it's an overhaul of a lot of different applications that we're looking at.
Really, kind of the backbone of
It
the technology piece as far as that's running behind the scenes everything in the
absolutely
corporation.
it will touch everyone. It will give everyone some new tools to make us better, more efficient, and I think take us into I'm gonna say a new environment, but it will drastically change with having these new applications.
So, Stacy, could you talk a little bit about what that means for parents and the app that they can use?
Sure, that's one of the most exciting thing I think about this new piece of software. We have always had parent access where parents could go in and look at their students' grades and students could keep track of where they are, but it was never really a mobile app. And we know that's the way that most people now interface with
Right.
technology is through their mobile app. So this company has a much better interface for our parents and for our students, and we think they'll be thrilled with that. And hopefully we can use that for a lot of different services. You know, what they want to use it to pay their lunch, pay their daycare, their childcare, that type of thing, not just checking their students' grades. Teachers will be, I think, better able to communicate through the app with parents. So it should give them a one-stop shop to interface with the EVSC. So I love that about the
And
new
the
program.
interesting thing about what you're describing here, Stacy, and I know Dr. Smith, I've heard you say this before too. This is a major project because it touches so many aspects of the school corporation, correct?
It clearly does. I'd liken it really to electricity. People walk into a room, turn the switch on, and they just expect the lights to come on. So I think this has become embedded in so many things that we do that people just take so many things for granted, and the expectation is really, really high. Um, so we want to make certain that we are serving our customers, which would be our students or families. In many cases, it would also be our employees or teachers, food service, everybody, because it will impact everyone. Stacey, I want to go back to the app again because I think you shared the story last night that when grades change, that teachers could, or not teachers, but that parents were getting notified.
Right. Right. So one of some of the feedback that we got is, and this is what's been interesting about this whole process internally, we've been pressured, not pressured, but encouraged to look at new tools because there's more things out there. We've had our same piece of
Well,
software
and
for
let's just say,
28
yes, I
years.
have
Yes.
encouraged you.
Yes.
I hope you don't think of it as
Yes.
pressure, but
No,
yeah, let's
we're all in the same boat. We
yeah,
know this is needed. It's the right time. We've got the right people in place to
yes,
make this happen. So I feel good about it. But yes, the new app. We got feedback that a parent was frustrated that they kept getting notified by their teacher every time a grade would change, and so we went back to the vendor and said, okay, just tell us a little bit about how this works, and they assured us that parents have the ability to make sure that they can change how they want to be notified. So maybe it's not every time a grade is
right.
changed. Maybe it's just at the end of the semester or if a grade goes down, something like that. So they have complete control of that. But I was kind of laughing and thinking how horrible that we would be communicating to our parents too much
Yeah.
about what's going on with
But
their
just
kids.
kind of
But
note to self, and there will be videos and things like that for parents to kind of walk them through how to set up that up and the various components of the app.
right, and I think it's important to let everyone know that this is not going to happen this next
Thank
school
you.
year.
This
We're
is a
gonna
process.
This is a process, and we're gonna take a lot of time to make sure that we're reviewing our processes and not just putting a shiny new program on top of maybe processes that need to be improved or upgrading data from our current system that might be need to be cleaned up a little bit based on state requirements. We want to do all that work and review our processes and then roll this out the school year of 2023.
So you've been working in this space to get a new SIS system for a year.
Yes, which is
And
crazy.
and once the board approves the contract, then the implementation would take another year.
Right,
So in other words, please don't expect to download an app tomorrow because
right.
it's it's going to be actually about 14 months from now before it really does go live.
And I feel good about that too, that we're not pressuring ourselves. We're gonna do it right. We're gonna take the time to do it right and train our people, train our parents, and have a good rollout
Well,
next
and
school
you've
year.
said for a long time, as this has been brought up over the years, the need to move forward with something that could serve us better, that this isn't something that happens overnight. This is a major endeavor. I think it might be interesting too if you could touch on, Stacy, just the process that you use, because then kind of the next item is then sharing with the board the recommendation for the vendor. But how did you go about that over the past year to decide on what is the best system for EVSC?
Sure. I think once we knew we need to make a change, one of the driving forces were some state requirements. And the state is looking for vendors that can participate in this data exchange, which requires an EdFi certification, which is just I kind of talked about. It's kind of like having an electric or electrician certification or a security type of certification. It's just a way of ensuring that data can be transferred back and forth between systems. So the state's not saying you have to use a particular product, they're saying it needs to be EdFi certified. So that was our first cut. What systems are out there that have similar schools of our size that play in this game and are familiar with what Indiana is requiring. And then we decided as a cross functional team with HR, with finance, with all school people, all at the table, that we wanted a system that could serve all areas of the corporation. So there's a lot of companies that just do student information systems, but this particular one, or the ones that we wanted, would handle business, HR,
Handle
and
everything.
everything. Because there's some advantage to that, just that common interface, common support. And we know that the state's not only going to require us to do student data reporting this certain way, but they're going to start moving into the finance and HR areas as well. So we wanted to make sure we were positioning ourselves for that. So that got us down to just a couple of vendors. And then we brought in Megan Baker, Zach Tanner, and Diane Warner. They helped us kind of chunk out the different areas that we wanted to make sure that these vendors could demo. So we spent an hour and a half on, a simple, it's not simple, but just one topic like scheduling. And we had one vendor present their solution for an hour and a half on scheduling. And then after that, the other vendor did. So we had back-to-back presentations of smaller pieces of smaller processes that we wanted to make sure that they could cover and allowed us to evaluate. So then once we went through there, we all kind of gathered together and compared notes of which system we thought would serve us best, and we made that decision, and that's what I presented to the board last night as our recommendation.
And again, that decision for that recommendation was based on the feedback of many stakeholders. This wasn't just Stacy Mauser sitting in an office
Oh,
deciding, let's do this.
yeah, I think I said that 3 times. This is not an IT decision, it is far from that, and I feel good too about we gave a lot of opportunities for feedback. We sent out a message to teachers, "What's important to you in the student information system, that thing that you use every day, what are you looking for? How can we benefit you?" And got some really good feedback from them. We had a group of people that went back out to principals and reviewed videos. We recorded all of our demonstrations so we'd have access to those and we can share with other people. So we went out to principals, um, student services, went out to counselors. We made it a great effort to make sure that all voices were heard before we made this very important decision that's going to affect the school corporation for years and years to come.
And then in the end, the recommendation to our board that you shared that then they'll take action, or at least tentatively take action at our next meeting is which vendor?
Is Power School.
Okay.
Yeah, Power School. One of the things we talked about, they've been in business for a long time, but their model has been more to provide a ecosystem of a lot of different solutions. A lot of companies focus on just stay in their lane and provide just one type of piece of software, but they've made it their practice to go out and purchase other types of applications so that whenever you jump into their solution, you have access to a lot of different solutions. So that was that was something that was attractive to us, and we felt like would be of value to the corporation. And they're used throughout the state and districts that are our size too. That's comforting
And
to
that's
know.
important too,
It's
because we all know most districts are much, much smaller
right,
than we are. So.
right. And they've got a strong presence in Indiana with districts our size, and yeah, we feel really good that we've done our due diligence and taken our time to pick a vendor that we feel like can serve us well.
And I know
And
I've heard you say too, Dr. Smith, that this process you felt good about too as well with this.
very good, and really want to extend my appreciation to Stacy and everybody that worked with you directly, as well as all the outreach that was undertaken. I think it was a very inclusive process. If people wanted to have their thoughts and feelings known, certainly were ample opportunities to do that based upon their experiences. So, really just appreciate the time and effort that you took to make certain that we would find a solution that would work and benefit the largest number of people.
Well, thank you. Like I said last night, it was a group endeavor and had a lot of. I feel comfortable that we're ready to jump into this. That we've got the right people in the right positions, and we can make this a
And it
success.
sounds like we've got a timetable laid out that's going to ensure success
Right.
for
Exactly.
this
Not
transition.
because if you think about it, we're going to be going to all those different departments, talking about their processes and looking at upgrading while they're doing the day to day business of running the
Right.
school. So it'll be some hard work for us, but I think we're ready to take it
It'll be a
on.
push, but it's the right work.
It is the right work.
And I just want to amplify a little bit about what you said in terms of process, because this the software is incredibly important. But if you have processes that basically allow you to input what I call dirty data or
Hmm.
information that's not correct, then what you try to extract from that is going to be just as dirty. It won't be accurate. So it really is a multi-step process, but it's also incumbent upon us to make certain that the processes we have are the most efficient and effective so that we can actually utilize and leverage everything that our systems, our platforms should allow us to have.
Agree. Yeah, and we've already started doing that, which I think is exciting. That
It is.
taking the time to review our processes and making sure we're doing things right and best practice.
Yeah, I think there are far too many people that have a new SIS solution and think that will fix all of the issues or the problems. That's not going to be the case.
Well, Stacy, thank you very much for coming in. I look forward to having you back in a future podcast, maybe an update on how the process is going, especially as we get closer to that point a year from now where it's going to be fully implemented. It's going to be
Sure.
exciting to see that.
It will be exciting. We might have to do a podcast just on the parent app.
I think we can make that happen,
And
Dr.
let's
Smith.
bundle this joy and enthusiasm that she has now, because there may be days
Yeah.
in the next 14 months that are a little bit more challenging.
There
Yeah.
may be pain points, but we know where we're going to end up at the end of
You
this
bet.
road and looking forward to it. And thank you very
And
much,
That's right.
Stacy.
it will be better. Thanks
will
again
be.
for your leadership.
No problem. Thank you.
So, Dr. Smith, that also then included item 5.01, the first information item, when Stacy transitioned last night to making that recommendation. And then that takes us to the rest of the information items.
Yes, so 5.02 through 5.05 are the monthly revenue and expenditure reports and financial reports that Dr. Underwood brings to the board. And then 5.06 is the revision of a policy with the utilization of ESSER funds. I think there was an acknowledgement that we could leverage those funds maybe beyond the time period permitted by ESSER. So there's a provision here that will allow school corporations to transfer up to 15% of the school corporation's total annual budget from now until 2024. And then it goes back to the 10% that we currently have on the books.
Okay.
And then with continued business,
Yeah.
there were a couple things in continued business. One of the things that I wanted to lift up once again was the work of all of our staff for summer school. We have close to 2,500 students enrolled in summer school. And just to put that in perspective, that is larger than more than 50% of the school districts in Indiana. And that's what we do just as an aside for summer school. But it takes a lot of behind the scenes, and I think it's appropriate since Stacy is here to lift what I lifted last night, and that is student data folks have to quickly get teacher schedules ready, student schedules ready, along with establishing security for those teachers and employees that are going to be teaching in a different building than where they customarily teach. All this while they are ending the year, getting the state end reporting. Uh, or the year-end reporting finalized for the state, and then all of our techs getting devices to students ready for summer school as they are assessing the devices that have come back in for repair and making certain that those devices are all ready for next year. That's just a quick turnaround. I think that's just one small example of all the behind-the-scenes work that takes place. We talked this morning that our folks then deliver um, the equipment that our occupational therapists and physical therapists use with our students. They deliver those pieces of equipment to the home so that the students can still have the advantage of those pieces of equipment at home during the summer. I think it's just emblematic of so much of what goes on behind the scenes that people really don't realize.
And it's an understatement to say a quick turnaround time because we really finished the year on a Wednesday. If you go back to last
Yes,
week, we have the Memorial Day holiday, so we have a 3-day weekend. Summer programming starts the next day, then on Tuesday. So,
yes,
and kudos to the students too, because they've just finished
absolutely.
this end of a school year, and I've heard you say this. They have a nice holiday weekend. They're excited. Of course, who isn't when you're a child and summer is beginning? And then they're right back in. So, I mean, really, kudos to everyone, Stacy, your folks for all the behind the scenes they're doing, all of our teachers and school staff, and all of our students and families for making sure those kids are in attendance and they're really getting some great experiences during the
Yes.
summer.
And then the last comment during continued business was just about the tragedy in Texas. And, what I said last night, part personal opinion, but also sitting as a superintendent now beginning my 12th year. Um, Unfortunately, tragedies like that, people say, thoughts and prayers are with you, and that just becomes so hollow when it's not followed up by action. And so I hope that if there is any good that could come out of a tragedy such as this, I hope we finally stop politicizing this and seek several solutions that would lessen the chance that this would ever happen again. We have to stop politicizing these kind of things and take action. And it's not going to be a one size fits all, but I think there are multiple things that I believe the citizens of this country have a will to see our lawmakers and our leaders put in place because it is time to act.
Well said. What else can you say about that? So, thank you for sharing those comments last night. And again, then here on this podcast, Dr. Smith. And that wraps up this board meeting. So, we'll do this again here in 2 weeks after our next school board meeting. But thank you.
Thank you.